Welcome to a new episode of TTG Conversations 5 Questions video series. Today's episode is focused on resuming hospitality and tourism business in unstable times. Giving us insight on this topic are Mark Simmons and Michael Yates, co-founders of the Delivering Group. So the Delivering Group provides a broad range of strategic consulting services to the hospitality and tourism industries and has offices in Hong Kong, Singapore, Bangkok, Beijing, and New York. So it recently launched Good to Go, a suite of customized services to help organizations plan and manage the recovery from the ongoing impacts of the pandemic. So welcome Mark, welcome Michael, and thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Great to be here.
Yeah. I've got 5 questions for you, and here's the first. Things are starting to get noisy in the hospitality and tourism industry the past month, with more and more suppliers and destination representatives coming out with plans and new products and programs to restart business. Do you think we've arrived at a state of hypercompetition, or is this the most intense period yet to come?
Well, let me start, Karen, and thanks for the introduction on the Delivering Group. We set up reform this consortium to work in the industry, particularly with, should I say, hotel companies, tourism boards, airlines, convention bureaus, to work with them to target what we think are the right places to be going to. Because let's face it, the industry at the moment is in a pretty tough space. So what we have done is put together a suite of solutions that covers sales and marketing, distribution, public relations, etc., particularly for the smaller guys that are going to need it, because given what's happened, a lot of companies have had to downscale, so they'll be looking to outsourcing to a professional group, and with our backgrounds, we are pretty qualified to do that, and we'll get into that as we go through the questions. But in answer particularly to yours, yes, there is planning, absolutely. Everyone needs to be planning now. And there are plenty of examples. If you look at people trying to look at bubbles, so Singapore and New Zealand will have a bubble, right? So that's a start. And I'm using Singapore as an example. This will increase. Hong Kong's opening bubbles with China and Macau. Thailand is a good case in point. They are trying to get bubbles moving, but there are still some barriers there. But they will be a major contributor in Asia Pacific for the recovery. Phuket, Samui, if you look at those destinations, are definitely important. Right across Asia Pacific. Australia is still a fair way away for outbound travel. So we've got to be realistic about that. We see it more as, and I'll put Australia aside, we see it more within the region. We see China, and we've invested in a very good partner in Beijing who have coverage right across China. So we see that as a very good way forward, because China is going to be the fastest driver, to be honest, as this moves forward. But the reality is,
Mark, if I can.
Yep.
So just to pull that back out, Karen, to a macro level again for a moment in terms of the state of hypertension or competition that you referred to. I think a lot of people are starting to move towards that. They're getting excited about the opportunities, but one of the bigger problems is as soon as that we see a country get control over the virus, the question is then, do you reopen your borders, and do you risk second and third waves, right? So I think there are 2 things that the tourism industry needs to be focusing on right now, and that is first, fast and reliable testing. If we had better, more reliable and efficient and fast testing pre and post travel, then why the need for quarantine, right? If you're able to prove you're virus free before you get on the plane, when you arrive at the other end, then surely there would be a much greater comfort level about reopening. And the second thing is, once we have the vaccine, clearly there's going to take time before the vaccine is out there globally.
Yeah.
What we need is a universal system and recognition of a digital health certification. And so the tourism industry needs to understand that its future is inextricably linked to health and border control now. Because the only way we're going to be able to reopen and get the industry back on its feet and really start moving is for us to have some of those things in place. So as a business is clearly at the company level and helping people get going, but we need to have the right framework globally for the industry to really get back on its feet.
And point in case, and I'll use Thailand as an example, nobody is going to fly from wherever they're coming from to quarantine for 14 days. And then when they go back to their country, let's say Singapore or Hong Kong, it's another 14 days. So nobody's going to do that. So to Mike's point, if you take your test before you get on the plane from Singapore to Bangkok, and then you take the test in Bangkok and you're free, why do you need to have quarantine?
All right. Okay, we go to the second question. Are there lessons to be learned from this pandemic and tourism crisis that should alter the way hospitality and tourism organizations write their business strategy for tomorrow? I imagine a heavy reliance on volume market would be one.
Karen, I think there's a couple of elements to this, and you talk about the volume aspect to it. I think there's a real opportunity for the industry to reset and to have a look at what it's learned through this process, and I think one of them would be, how do we address that whole question of volume? And this is specifically for destinations and destination management. There's a real opportunity to say, okay, well, we've seen the worst sides of tourism, over-tourism, environmental degradation, the social impacts. So how do we, as we bring traffic back, do it in a way that's more sustainable and drives real benefit to destinations? So I think that's one big opportunity. But then at a company level, at a business level, clearly people are going to be wanting to get business back on track as fast as possible, right? And that tends to be a volume game. And as Mark said earlier, I'm sure a lot of the clients that we're talking to and dealing with are looking to China, are looking to Asia, are looking to Southeast Asia to kickstart that business and get it going again. So I think there's an opportunity for us to do it better, and but still, have a sense of urgency and get the business flowing as quickly as possible.
And point in case, and sorry to be a bit Singapore biased here, but if Malaysia and Indonesia were able to open up, it's a different ballgame for fast recovery.
Okay, for the young, the brave, and the restless leading the travel and tourism recovery to the meteoric rise of meaningful travel changing the way itineraries are curated, industry watchers have projected many trends likely to emerge on the recovery horizon. So which trends would you say are the most possible or critical and should therefore be considered in a relaunch strategy and campaign?
Okay. The travel industry and tour operators and agents have always been people that we've worked very close with over the years, and that will never change. They're going through tough times, as hotels are, as cruise companies are, but a growing trend is actually in direct distribution, where companies are providing solutions to accommodation suppliers, to cruise suppliers, to airlines, of what we call artificial intelligence, chatbot. So consumers can immediately get their questions answered. So the chatbot comes onto the hotel's website, if you want to use hotels as an example, and the chatbot is 24/7 and totally answers all the questions. So you want to say, I want to stay in this hotel on XYZ date. Do you have a swimming pool? How far from the airport? What are your current rates? Because the chatbot is also linked to the hotel property management system and their GDS and reservation system. So discerning youngsters is the wrong word. Let's say discerning individual travellers are going to look at these options because it's much faster. You can book your flight easy, and then for the hotel, you can get it all done without having to get 7 or 8 emails. The chatbot, the AI, gives you that answer without you having to send more than 1 email. So we see this as a way of the future, and we partnered with a company called HiGiffy, who have over 500 hotels operational in Europe in 15 countries. They have 2 major groups in Asia Pacific already, Park Hotel Group out of Singapore and Fraser Hospitality. I'm not trying to plug them because that's HiGiffy's business, but we are in partnership with them to develop this further, and we're going to go deep into China with them as well, deep into Australia. So this is, in addition to our great partnerships in the travel industry, this is also a very growing part of business. And it's not just in hospitality, it's in many parts of the world.
Mark, I might just add to that, one of the other benefits of this type of technology, Karen, we've talked in the past of being seamless or frictionless, is moving more to a touchless approach. So in an environment where we're looking around hygiene factors and trying to reduce the amount of human-to-human contact around manual processes, we can achieve 2 things. We can be more efficient in the way we operate, and we can be safer in terms of having less human-human contact. It doesn't mean in a hospitality context that you're reducing the customer care factor or the smiling face or any of the things that we know are important to the tourism experience, but it does mean that you can operate more efficiently and create a greater degree of comfort around the hygiene factors in a COVID world. So it's using technology in a smart way.
All right.
So to that point, the AI chatbot solution is not just about getting your answers to make the booking. It's about the whole customer experience while you stay and post-stay. And it's all interactive. So you don't actually have to talk to anyone, which is a little bit scary, but that is the way it's sort of going.
Okay, good. So how should a solid relaunch strategy or campaign look like?
I'll defer to Mike.
I guess this is sort of, the basic marketing in the sense that, before you push any buttons about relaunch campaigns, you need to have done your homework and looked at your markets and looked at the intelligence that tells you whether your segments are right, whether there's the right uplift and capacity to bring business to you from various markets. So there's that level of analysis that needs to go on. There's been sort of a rule of thumb, I guess, Karen, where people talked about, you fish in your domestic market first, you then go to your regional surrounding market, and then you go to your long haul markets. Yes and no. There's some obvious logic in your domestic market first, but it's not going to be as simple as that. You're going to need to really look hard at where there's a comfort level in people travelling from a destination to another destination. Some of the things I talked about before in terms of hygiene and safety factors around demonstrating ability to travel and managing border control. So it's a more complex picture in many ways. One thing I think will still be there. There's been some question marks about whether people are going to be more cautious about travel. I think travel's innate. I think everybody really wants to travel. I think there's a massive amount of pent-up demand for travel, and that's going to come back very, very strongly. But the question then is, okay, how do you find it? How is it? Where are the markets that are relevant to you? And that's got to be based on sound strategy and research and planning. So even more so than in the past. So I think that's the key to rebuilding your plans before you're pushing any buttons about welcome back messages, right? You really got to do your homework. Yeah.
And just to add to that, Karen, despite all the new platforms of intelligence, etc., what the industry needs to look at is we're going to be in Asia Pacific the most relevant markets that are going to come back the fastest. So again, I say it's China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea, and then in time, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, and of course Singapore. Australia will come, but you need to, when you're doing relaunch plans, is to focus on, I call it fish where the fish are, right? Because Europe is not coming back, or the US, anytime quick, period. So we focus on, with what we do with our clients, and also the industry should be doing, is focus on where the fast term results are going to be, because they will come.
Good
And
point.
one other point I'd add on that, Karen, is about yield. In terms of analysing where you're going to get your business versus your competitors, it's going to be a temptation for everybody to lead on price to get the business back as quickly as possible. And we'd be talking to our partners and clients about, okay, well, do you want to compete in that space? You don't want profitless volume. So how do you get the business back at a rate that makes sense, which is pretty important.
And Mike, you made a point about this pent-up demand. You're in Hong Kong, there is pent-up demand. I'm in Singapore, so is Karen. When I play golf on the weekend, all the guys, they can't go to Batam, they can't go to Bintang, they just want to get out. They can't go to Bangkok to play golf, they can't go to Phuket. It's just an example. There's pent-up, people are just waiting.
That's true, yeah.
And you know it well, Karen.
I know it well, yeah. We're just itching to get out now.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. How does one plan for recovery or set a recovery plan in motion when activity resumptions are still hindered by stops and starts triggered by sudden, community outbreaks? We've seen that happen in Melbourne, where your hometown is, Michael.
Yeah, well, I guess the new normal is disruption, if it wasn't before, right? COVID's going to be around for a while. And there'll be other outbreaks, there'll be other disruptive factors that we can't even imagine today. So, it sounds like a fairly simple statement, but I think the answer is to see stops and starts as a normal part of business. So how do you become quicker to pivot, to react, to respond, how to scale up and scale down, not over-reliance on specific markets, but being aware that in today's world, disruption is everywhere and it will continue. So this clearly, a global pandemic, is something we don't want too often. We can do without that, thank you very much. But there will be more. If it's not a health issue, there'll be other issues that will come up on the landscape, and we've got to deal with them. So it's about being nimble, being ready to pivot, and understanding that this is part of the world that we live in today.
Thank you so much for your time. That's all the 5 questions I have for both of you. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks, TTG.
Yeah. And if there are topics you'd like us to tackle on this video series, leave your comments below. We'd love to hear from you. So everyone, take care, stay safe. Goodbye.
Thanks.